All right, so we got Antony Blinken going on Meet the Press to discuss the Russian chaos, okay? If you haven't heard, the Wagner mercenary leader led a march to Moscow and was claiming that he was going to, he's disappointed with the Russian leadership and wanted changes in terms of how the Russian leadership is made up. And this is a big surprise, and in a country where Putin's power is based on sort of him being viewed as inevitable and invincible and unfightable, and you best not even try to stir up the pot because Putin's just too strong and there's no way to tangibly. Well, all of that thinking has been changed in the short span of about agree to pull his troops back and to not continue his march to Moscow. So bloodshed was avoided in the city of Moscow, but Putin's political strength and just the way he's viewed generally by people in his country, how that has been changed or harmed remains to be seen, but it could end up being very significant, the events of the last couple of days. So let's listen to Antony Blinken here talking a bit in detail about his assessment of what's been going on in Russia.
And joining me now is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Secretary Blinken, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks, Chuck.
I'll be right back.
Let me just start with your observations. What did we just see over the weekend? And the reason I ask that is because, look, this is a country that misinformation is a feature, not a bug. Sometimes there's theater. What should we believe with what we just witnessed in the last 48 hours in Russia?
Well, Chuck, if you put this in perspective, what we've seen is extraordinary. Think about it this way. 16 months ago, Russian forces were on the doorstep of Kyiv in Ukraine, believing they would take the capital in a matter of days and erase the country from the map as an independent country. Now, what we've seen is Russia having to defend Moscow, its capital, against mercenaries of its own making. So in and of itself, that's extraordinary. And in so doing, we've also seen rise to the surface profound questions about the very premises for this Russian aggression against Ukraine that Prigozhin surfaced very publicly, as well as a direct challenge to Putin's authority. So I think we've seen more cracks emerge in the Russian facade. It is too soon to tell exactly where they go and when they get there. But certainly we have all sorts of new questions that Putin is going to have to address in the weeks and months ahead.
Wow. All right. So next clip I got here for you is Blinken's assessment on Belarus President Lukashenko's involvement in the deal, which apparently Lukashenko had a very prevalent presence in negotiating, which is quite strange given that Putin is, he wants to be seen as the strong man and the big guy in charge. So people are wondering where would Lukashenko factor into Putin's decision making?
And it does.
The president of Belarus apparently mediated this. That seemed startling because this is somebody that is portrayed by many Western analysts as simply a puppet of Putin. Puppets don't often mediate their puppeteers here. So what do you make of this?
One second here. I'm going to refresh the video. It's kind of skipping a bit.
And joining me now is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken.
Sorry, guys.
They're puppeteers here. So what do you make of this? Are we underestimating Belarus here?
I think it's important for us not to speculate, and I suspect that we'll learn more and more in the days and weeks ahead, including the actual details of whatever deal was struck. It may be that Putin didn't want to debase himself to the level of negotiating directly with Prigozhin, so it was useful to get someone like Lukashenko into this on his behalf. But again, that is speculation. We want to avoid that. We want to focus on the facts, and we want to keep the focus on Ukraine.
Okay, so we don't exactly know, is what Blinken is saying, exactly how the Belarus president factored in. It's just interesting that he was involved at all. So next up, the clip I got here for you is Blinken talking about Russia's nuclear posture. And this is a concern that a lot of people were having as the chaos was unfolding. Russia has the second most nuclear weapons in the world, if I'm not mistaken, just going off the top of my head. Someone please tell me if I'm wrong about that, but I believe that they have the second most nuclear weapons. And a lot of people are going, well, if the Russian government is in like chaos and they're like there's an attempted overthrow, or an attempted an attempt to change the leadership of the Russian government. What does that mean for Russia's massive nuclear arsenal that they have? And could one of the control of the nuclear arsenal be up in the air at any given moment? There's a concern that a lot of people had. So here's Blinken's thoughts on it.
Questions that he has to find answers for.
I know that there are no changes to their nuclear posture. Was there open communication on that front, military to military, on the nuclear issue over the weekend or not?
Chuck, I'm not going to get into what diplomatic or other communications we had with Russia, but of course, we're very focused anytime there is instability in a major country like Russia, particularly one with nuclear weapons. There has been no change in their nuclear posture. There's no change in our nuclear posture, but it's something that we're watching very carefully.
So no change with the nukes. That's good news for a lot of different reasons, obviously. So next up here, we got Blinken talking about the opportunity for the Ukrainian counteroffensive to benefit from this instability.
Does this go to full speed ahead for the Ukraine counteroffensive? Is this a moment of opportunity?
Chuck, it is full speed ahead for the counteroffensive, but they have a plan, and they have a very deliberate plan. They're prosecuting that plan, and we have more than 50 countries that continue to support them in that effort to make sure that they have everything they need to do as well as they can in taking back the land that was seized from them by Russia over the last 16 months. That is in train, but it's going to take some time, weeks, maybe even months. Yeah. There are very strong defenses that the Russians have built up in recent months that the Ukrainians are working their way through. But at the end of the day, the bottom line really is this, and it's the reason that Ukraine will prevail. This is about their land. This is about their future. This is about their freedom, not Russia's. And that is, in a sense, the real difference maker that you're going to see unfold.
All right. Lastly, we have Blinken on a potential China-Cuba base that has been rumored to potentially be in development. That would be a Chinese base stationed right outside of United States borders. So obviously, national security concern. Let's hear what our Secretary of State Antony Blinken has, and then this will be the last clip I got for you guys.
Are you going to prevent China from having a military base on the island of Cuba?
We have been not only looking, but also engaging in a number of countries over the last couple of years where China is trying to get a foothold. And we've been engaged diplomatically in a number of places. Yeah. And we've had some success in either preventing that, delaying that, or turning that around. We continue to do that. I've raised that directly with my Chinese counterparts. They know where we stand on that issue.
I noticed you say you raised it.
All right. So that's Tony Blinken. Some really interesting insight on the chaos. Obviously, Blinken is going to be very, very liberal in what he says. That it's an understatement. These guys are always conscious of making sure that they're not saying anything that could be misconstrued or later turns out to be untrue. So my takeaway here is that the U.S. government and even Blinken himself here, they don't necessarily have all of the answers for the general public yet as to how this is going to play out and how this has affected the Ukraine-Russia conflict and how this could affect the long-term viability of Putin's regime. I think they're still figuring out a lot of this stuff with us, and they don't necessarily have the scoop, if you will, on some of these questions. So we're really gonna just have to wait and see what's gonna go down in the next few days, the next few weeks. Is Putin's regime going to be significantly challenged in any sort of way? And is this chink in the armor that has been exposed, does this chink in the armor spread and damage the rest of the suit of armor slowly but surely? We'll all just have to wait and see.